waiting for a couple of people to join, so thank you very much for taking the time to wait for me. You should have a chat window in the bottom right-hand side, so do feel free as we go through to ask any questions that you might have. Today we're going to be talking about media planning. We're going to look at it from the point of view of recruitment of staff, and we're going to look at it from the point of view of corporate marketing. So that corporate marketing element will be attracting people to your business or organization, whether that's parents, pupils, learners, customers, clients, whoever it might be. But we will touch on staff recruitment as well. So my name is James Digby. I run a agency called Bright, and we specialize in media planning and recruitment advertising for a range of sectors. Many of them are education clients, many are charities, but everybody is values-led or purpose-led to some capacity, even the businesses that we work with. Each year, we run about 5,000 campaigns. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about will be based on the campaign data that we have from that. And we use that campaign data to be able to make better informed decisions for our clients. And potentially, you can get a 100% increase in your click-through rate, but most people see about a 40% improvement in their click-through rate and their return on investment through us. And we maintain that through using kind of our media relationships and the data that we have for the different media channels. Today, we'll be talking about what does media planning actually mean? What does an agency do in terms of media planning? We're going to talk a little bit about campaign delivery, how you can make sure it's strategic, how we can talk about that word strategic and it not just being a buzzword. We'll talk a bit about maximizing return on investment. I really like a good case study, so we'll talk about some case studies. We'll talk about data, because I really like data as well, and how you can maybe make sure that when everything is changing so rapidly at the moment, everything that you do is future-proofed, at least for the coming kind of 6 to 12 months. But hopefully, you can build some different processes in to make sure that you're constantly being agile. And then finally, we'll just talk through a quick summary and a few takeaways in terms of what you can do as a next step. In terms of kind of making the most of the session, we have a number of resources. We've just updated some of our resources, so do feel free to use the resources on our website. They're completely free. Do ask questions as we go along. It's much easier, hopefully from your side, to ask a question when we're talking about a particular topic. I will leave some time at the end to answer any questions you might have, and I will be sharing the recording at the end of this session too. And then feel free, if you're really struggling to apply some of the things that we're talking about, feel free to book in a free session with me, because I know sometimes I'm talking in a very general way, and some people are quite keen to know, how does this apply to my organization or business? So media planning and media planning agencies, the support we provide, the support that media planning, if you do it internally, provides for your strategy, is to convert what you're trying to achieve into reality. So if your marketing strategy is focused on converting, say, 20 clients, if your recruitment strategy is focused on filling all of your jobs first time, the media planning element is, what are the best places to market and advertise your jobs and your services or your products to your target audience so that you can convert them and achieve those goals. It also looks at managing your audience targeting. So it's great to be able to say these are the different channels that you're using over the course of a year, but it's really important that those channels are reaching the right audience. There's no point in sending your messaging out to people who aren't interested, or just as bad, people who engage with your content, but they're not necessarily going to convert ever into a customer or a candidate. So the process tends to be, and we'll go through the process a bit further in, but in general, the process tends to be reviewing who your audience is, building targeting for that across the channels that you've selected, and then working out what your budget is going to be allocated against each one. We use out of home, so that's displays, billboards, door drop campaigns. We use print, and we use a number of different digital channels. There are about 3,000 channels out there for recruitment and marketing, quite a lot of overlap between the two. Um, we narrowed that down to between 300 to 360 that we use each year, depending on the year. But it is particularly overwhelming at the moment. People are quite often bombarded with different channel options. So you're trying to connect your marketing or your recruitment strategy with that actual deliverable of what you're looking for. And ideally, at the moment, if you're working with a media agency or you're doing this in-house, you'd be negotiating for that media space and you'd be picking those right channels without guesswork. Um, we are here if you currently work with us or you work with us in the future, we are here to make sure that you reach your right audience through the right channels at the right time. So there's a combination of strategy there, data, and then the delivery piece. So how do you actually go about doing that, and how do you then condense that process down into something that is achievable, that you can do in your time, without basically being overwhelmed? So the first thing that we would normally start with would be to define your objectives. So what are you looking to achieve? For some people, that will be brand awareness. So it will be making people aware that you're an employer in the local area or in a particular area or in a particular profession. Or for marketing, it might be making people aware of your services and your products. And then discussing with internally or externally with whether you're going to be focused on brand awareness or lead generation or what percentage of both. So you're looking to convert people, or you're looking to educate people of your existence. Ideally, your marketing strategy would already be fitting in with your business goals. If it isn't, it's important just to look back at that. So which part of your business goals or your organization goals are you focused on in your area of work? So if it's recruitment, say you're a school, it's going to be very important that if you're positioning yourself as having good quality education, then you're recruiting good quality educators. If you are a exam board, there's an importance in terms of marketing that you confirm to people and you educate people about the fact that they can rely on the quality of your qualifications. Once you have those objectives, you can then start to map your target audience. So, how do those people engage with marketing? Where do they do that? When do they do that? And how do they consume that media? Do they prefer emails? Do they do it via videos? Do they do it videos with subtitles? Are those videos long or are they short format? Once you understand how those people engage with different pieces of content and at which point they engage with that content, you can start to select the channels and the platforms that you're going to use, and start to kind of consider what creative is required for each of those different platforms, so that the messaging is correct and it is actually engaging for those people. Does anybody have any questions about that? Hopefully a reasonably short summary and an easy one to digest in terms of what the process is. Um, Once you've been able to kind of get to that stage, the work sadly doesn't end there. Scheduling those campaigns for maximum impact requires you to have a certain um, agile approach to what you're doing. And it's important that throughout the year, there's always stuff either planned or hopefully going out to keep that brand awareness, whether it's employer brand or corporate brand, to keep that brand in people's minds. Where you do things in particular bursts or it's particularly seasonal, you just got to be careful that brand awareness has been delivered first. And then in real time, track the performance of those campaigns so you can adjust them based on what's happening. If you're targeting an audience and a weekend things aren't working out, you need to understand, is this because people haven't seen those campaigns enough to be able to convert? Or is this because you've got the wrong target audience or you're not putting enough budget behind it? And that can be really difficult to do. So you've got to look at the data, you've got to look at the tracking. And if you haven't had that set up from day one, it's going to be really difficult to make sure you have everything that you need. So we'll talk about data in a short while. Um, Return on investment, if you talk to a number of the suppliers we work with, you talk to a number of different providers, when you talk about the fact that you're not necessarily getting the return that you want, the first thing a lot of people say is you need to be spending more. That isn't what maximizing return on investment is about. It's about spending the budget that you have in a smarter way. So the way that you can do that is to be more strategic, and I don't mean that necessarily in the buzzword of kind of Googling strategy plans. I mean that in terms of reviewing the things that you have, reviewing your goals, and making sure that they align with that original strategy. It's very easy to review your strategy every 6 months or 12 months and not to be considering it constantly. So regularly look at what you're trying to achieve, how it fits in with your business or your organization, and make sure that the channels are performing so you can deliver on those goals. The best way to make sure that your targeting is working is to have tracking. There's no real way to kind of go about improving things unless you're tracking what are the number of impressions, what are the number of views, what are the number of people clicking through to your website, how do those people engage with your website, how long do they spend on your website, and then what activities do they take. Google Analytics is an amazing tool for that. You would ideally be using things like tracking conversions. So you can do that through Google Tag Manager if you're in marketing, or you can do that through, say, an ATS or Google Tag Manager if you're in recruitment. Um, Negotiate um, the media and the channels that you have with those suppliers. If you work with us, we'll be doing that every time we talk to them. We know the best times to get the best deals, and we know that when somebody sends through certain deals, they're rubbish, and when other people send through certain deals, they're amazing, and everything in between. So we can help you with that. But keep a track of what's going on. Keep a track of what other people in the sector are struggling with and what they're not struggling with, and see how those different media channels are helping them in those areas. So networking can be quite an important part of that. And then, as I just said, using that data to track the results and then refine your next campaigns for a better conversion rate will give you a better return on investment. I always like the funnel approach, looking at things in terms of a funnel and then having the figures next to them. So, how many impressions do you need to get to have a certain number of clicks through to your website? How many people need to visit your website to be able to convert? And then you can track that over time and make the required optimization as you go along, but also when you review things every 3 months or 6 months or 12 months. So we've got a real world case study here where this university was struggling to kind of understand what their approach to media planning needed to be. They identified that they did need to revamp it, but they knew what their goal was, and that's really, really important. It sounds really stupid, but it is really important to know what that goal is. So they were looking at undergraduate enrollment. And previously, things were very fragmented for them, and it lacked measurable outcomes. So there's quite a bit of information here, and that's because I'll be sharing the content after this session and want people to go back to it. The way that they looked at this was to unify and consolidate everything. So it started to sit under one budget, so it was no longer fragmented. That allowed them to streamline what they were trying to do. Because they had that very clear goal, they could also improve tracking because everything was fitted together and everybody was tracking things in one place. So not just about the budget, it's also about consolidating the fact that you're recording the tracking in one location. Um, they ran display campaigns They considered how different target audiences behaved on the different digital platforms that they used. They also kind of, and we'll come on to this, but they also kind of looked at the different contexts of the different places that there would be marketing to people. Um, so they were using geo-targeting, and they were using lookalike audiences to reach people and influencers who are likely to share their content and engage with their content. So geo-targeting meant that then when somebody was in a particular area, they received a particular campaign, and when they were in a different area, they received a different type of campaign, which allowed them to get the messaging right for the context of it where they were. So a good example would be that I've seen a number of educational organizations, potentially if they're using display advertising in a gym, they could be focusing on the sporty side of their educational services. And if they're advertising in a library or in the area of a library, they could focus maybe on that more academic piece. But you can get quite detailed, and you can get quite focused on this. So there's lots of different things that you could do. They ran Google search campaigns with specific keywords. So they were looking at what people were kind of searching for and how those people engaged with them. They used social media adverts on Meta, so Facebook and Instagram. And those things, the fact that they kind of weren't really doing anything that was unified before, those things kind of combined so that they got a greater return on investment, because sometimes people are seeing their advert on Facebook, sometimes on Instagram, sometimes on Google, and the fact that they had those multiple touch points across different platforms helped them to increase engagement. One thing that I think sometimes even kind of I struggle with on things like LinkedIn is to make sure that the call to actions are very regular and very clear. So make sure that people know what you're offering through that call to action. And sometimes you might want to kind of remove the contact us, and you might want to put in something that is a bit more engaging so that people know when they click that call to action what they're getting. So they're getting free information, they're booking a tour, are they um, are they arranging like a virtual tour? Are they arranging a demo of a product? Whatever it might be. So make those call to actions very clear, because it worked really well for them. And then they use retargeting. So retargeting across platforms depends on the size of your target audience. So if that's something that's not available for you, then that's just kind of an issue that you have to overcome. It's not something you can necessarily work around, but some platforms you need a certain audience size to be able to retarget people who have engaged with them. But for them, they were big enough in terms of target audience to use that retargeting. So by doing this approach of kind of consolidating, reviewing their target audience, reviewing how their budget works, reviewing how their tracking works, and then using these multiple channels, so having a diverse media schedule, they were actually able to exceed their goals. So if this is something that's of interest to you, I'd highly recommend Googling their campaign, because there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from it. So these are the things that we highlighted that we thought would be kind of relevant takeaways. So centralized media buying budget and tracking really helps. Um, Reviewing regularly that audience that you're targeting, how they behave, where they will be viewing that content, and what the context of that content is. Considering lookalike audiences so that you can reach people that you perhaps haven't considered in the past, and then having multiple calls to action to drive actual conversions rather than just likes and shares and so on and so forth is really important, especially where you're looking to, as they were, increase lead generation by increasing in enrollment, is less important when you're looking at, say, brand awareness, though. Um, in terms of the retargeting, those people that have engaged with you in some way are really important. Where you can't use retargeted display adverts, either for recruitment or for marketing, you can do some fairly clever things. So, for example, on um, recruitment careers pages, or your page for your product or your service, where you want people to fill in a form, it is possible that when they go to exit that tab, it has a pop-up. You may have seen this when you're shopping online. So when people go to exit that tab, it says you still have something in your basket, or before you go, we've got a 10% discount. You can use that to engage with people for your product or service or your job advert. So, for example, you could have a pop-up on your careers site that just offers somebody some additional help, or it offers them the ability to have a phone conversation with somebody so that they don't drop out of the process at that early stage. From a marketing point of view, I really like surveys at this point so that people can kind of get some feedback as to why they're not progressing any further, so that you can adjust. It might be because you don't have the right information on that page that you're driving people to, or it might be something that you can't change. But where you can change it, it's valuable to have that information. And quite often, people have significantly more views to their website than they do conversions. So the more you know about those people that don't convert, the better. People often ask, how do you make sure that you're not bombarding with people with marketing? It's very difficult to do this because at the moment we know that you need to get in front of people potentially as many as 15 times before you can convert them into applying for a job, or purchasing your product, service, or even going for an open day or a demo of your product. Um, that's gone up from about 8 times last year. Um, and part of that just comes from the fact that people are more suspicious of marketing. It comes from the fact that people are very bombarded with marketing. And it comes from the fact that people have just got a little bit fatigued with the fact that everywhere you go, there is an advert for something. The best solution really for this is to have a diverse range of media, so out of home, digital, and print. It really helps, and it reduces your over reliance on a single platform. What you want is you want people to be aware of you, so that when you do get in front of them in the right time, and they've got the time to be able to kind of engage with you in the way that you want, that you're there. And that's really difficult to do, but definitely a diverse range of channels can really help with that. Um, we really like data at Bright. Um, the things that you can do with Google Analytics, things you can do through A/B testing, the things that you can do in terms of heat maps on your website and understanding how people engage with you, um, are vital. So analyze that data, report on that data. Even if it's very simple, high level information. So, how many people viewed the campaign? How many people clicked through on it? And how many of those people did you convert? You can't do lots of complicated things. You can't be kind of looking at bounce rates. This is the stuff that I would say was minimum: impressions, clicks, and conversions. Um, in terms of those people that you have converted into purchasing your product, your service, or recruited, talk to those people. They're really valuable to you. They can give you amazing insight, not only in terms of why they picked you, but I would also say in terms of what was their journey. So, did they see your advert in the newspaper, for example? Did they then get it presented to them in Google? And then it was only when they saw it on Facebook that they clicked through. When you can understand those journeys, you can optimize what you're currently doing so that you convert more people in the long term. We're seeing the rise, as everybody is, in artificial intelligence. Great for automating some of the different things that you can do. Not so great in terms of people bombarded with low quality content. People really want at the moment summaries of things. They want the headline information because they're getting tired basically of seeing lots of AI generated content. This means that if you really want to be successful, you've got to have authentic content. Ideally, you would have written it by yourself, and ideally, you would be writing it in simple, clear language rather than relying on platforms like ChatGPT to write it for you, where they might be adding in a lot of content that isn't what you want to say. Um, Radio, so DAB, video on demand, podcasts, influencer marketing, they are all growing quite significantly at the moment. You can do a lot more, say video on demand, you can do a lot more targeting than you ever could before, which is absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely amazing. And it's making some of those on demand channels more affordable for people. So Channel 4 on demand, for example, you'd never have been able to run a national campaign. Now you could target a particular audience so that you're reaching your target audience and it's not wasted money. A lot around privacy, consent, and ethical use of data. Um, I think that people are really concerned about how their data is handled. People are really concerned about privacy. So make sure that you're constantly up to date with that privacy and consent bit, and make sure that you're up to date with how you handle data and GDPR. And then finally, one of the nice bits that I think everyone can kind of jump into is short form video is really um, it's kind of summarizing a lot of the trends that we're seeing, and that people want things that is quick to digest and easy to digest. So if you've got video, take some of that video, shorten it down, because it's going to be stuff that you can use across multiple channels. So these are the key points that we talked about. So we can help you kind of reduce down that noise in terms of those multiple thousands of different options out there with kind of precise planning. Um, Turn what kind of media budget you have into something that is measurable. It's really important that it's measurable, um, because otherwise you could be spending thousands of pounds on something that you don't know whether it's working or it's not working. And even where it does work, it'd be interesting and relevant for you to know why it worked, and what didn't work. Um, Media agencies can help you gain access to insights and tools. It's very difficult to know what other people are doing. Whereas for a media agency, we know what other people are doing. We can talk you through that. And then we can make sure that in the future, you're future proofed. So we talk about kind of the key trends that we're seeing coming up. They're the best things that you could be looking at the moment so that you're future proofing your approach. So um, that is a kind of a summary and an overview of our views on media planning. Um, I'd welcome the chance to answer any questions that anybody might have. I'm just going to stop the recording.